Sabbath, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy,
Killer.
That sort of thing. That was what set me off.
And you made it through the solo of Painkiller.
Many people haven't. We've lost many people due to that solo.
Yes.
But I prevailed every night when you go on and you play in front of 10, 20, 80,000 people. You're doing a duty.
I had a flashback to Woodstock just now. That's it.
Job done. That's all I'm trying to do. Whatever guitar it is, you have to sit there. Your chest has just been opened up and put back together with wires. Literally, you don't have to be great to do, but you have to do to be great.
That's a good way to start the morning. Hey everyone, Dinesh here with Gibson, and I am hanging out with guitar extraordinaire Richie Faulkner, Gibson artist, guitarist of Judas Priest, and shredder extraordinaire again. My God, it's so great to be here with you, man. It's so great to have you down here.
It's an honor and a pleasure. What a great setup. I think we're going to have some fun. We're playing. Yeah. You've got a beautiful guitar. I've got a beautiful guitar.
My gosh.
What could go wrong?
As long as nothing blows up, but if it does, that's like an added bonus for us, I think.
It usually does with me.
My gosh. But man, so excited to have you here. Man, tell me about some of the early days. Some of the stuff, when you were just starting off, just getting to know the guitar, what you were doing, what you were playing with, like how'd the whole journey begin, kind of thing.
Well, I was introduced to the guitar and guitar music through my father. My father was a fan. And I don't know if you know this, but obviously my first name is Richard. My last name is Faulkner. My middle name is Ian.
Okay.
Now, my mother was probably convinced that it was a good, strong name, but my father knew that R-I-F spells riff. So he knew exactly what he was doing. I don't know if you knew that. So I was introduced to the whole thing by my father, Hendrix, Sabbath, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy,
Killer.
That sort of thing. That was what set me off. And, he introduced me to the guitar, and he had friends in bands around London and stuff. So they'd lend us guitars, and he'd show me a few chords like E and A. You could just move your fingers and
So he played a little bit too?
He played a little bit,
yeah. Okay, yeah.
So he showed me, you don't have to move your fingers too much, and you've got two chords there. So I was introduced to it via that. And then I remember kind of just learning stuff through the vinyl. You put Jimi Hendrix smash hits or whatever it might have been, and literally lifting the vinyl. I'm not the only one that's done this, but the old thing of lifting the needle and that note and finding it on the neck, and then lifting it back and finding the next note. Sure. Literally that, note for note type stuff. And it takes a long while.
Right.
But I think you build up a relationship between your ear, what you're hearing, and where it is on the neck. So it might take longer, but after a while, I think you know what I mean? You kind of know instinctively where those things are.
Totally. There's no tab books, there's no video at this time. So that's also huge for the ear training.
Yeah, without knowing it, you're learning quite a lot. It's frustrating because but I think also you're so intrigued by what's going on, the sonics of it, and obviously with Hendrix, the visual as well. You're so intrigued by the whole thing. And it still intrigues me today, inspires me today. But so you don't think about any of that. So the frustration is just part of what you need to get through to find out what that note is or what he's doing there or, what it is. So it doesn't really come into your brain. So from there, I got a job in a music store when I was around 12 or 13.
Okay.
And the guy had a cover band, and he's a great friend of mine. He's been a friend of mine since then. And he said, why don't you get up and do a couple of songs with us? And long story short, it went from there. And I got up, I was a 13-year-old kid playing Don't Believe a Word by Thin Lizzy or Jimi Hendrix All Along the Watchtower or UFO's Doctor Doctor. I think it was a bit of a novelty at the time. You had these pubs in London, and there was a young kid in there playing all these classic rock songs.
I was like, how are you getting into the... Is it
I don't know.
Like get him in and get him out? Or
I
is
don't
it just
know.
Was more lax at that time,
I don't know. That's a good question. I've never thought about that. But I think it was a case of, you're a pub band. You're there to sell beer. Sure. You're there getting paid by the landlord to be entertainment, to sell beer. And I think having a 13-year-old kid playing those songs might have brought people in some way. And they bought their Guinness or whatever it might have been at the bar. So I don't know. But as I grew older, I learnt more songs and became more a part of that. And it went from there really. And then you sort of get into your own bands and try and make your own versions of these songs, and they're literally the same versions of these songs. You know, like
Sure.
they're literally copies because that's all you know. You know, and you aspire to be as good as they are. I moved to Sweden, same thing. Got in my own band and tried to put that together and write songs and original stuff. Came back to England, and the guy I told you about is still going in the band, and I slotted straight back in. And we used to play every week. You know, Wednesday to Sunday, Thursday to Sunday, every night. You know, playing covers. We used to play like Fleetwood Mac to Jeff Beck to the Rolling Stones to Purple to Priest, you name it. I mean, it was the. I mean, if you want to be a guitar player, a gigging rock guitar player, you've got to know like a menu of all those classics.
Yes.
You know,
or as they'll say, jazz standards, but like, yeah, you've got to know the rock standard.
Exactly. And again, it was frustrating at times because you're going to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, freezing cold, loading out a Marshall stack into a van.
So these are like the 4 hour, like 2 to 4 hour gigs.
Yeah. And you know, I used to work in bars during the week, and then you know get out of there early to go and play somewhere in West London with 2 people and a dog. You know,
Sure.
But again, you do it because you love it. And you know, my point is, you're carrying out these guitar cabinets, and there's no one there, and you hate it. You're absolutely frustrated, but you're there the next night doing the same thing because it's part of you. It's part of what drives you, even though you hate it sometimes. It's
just for that feeling, and when you're
undeniable.
up there, that's yeah.
And it's
No,
still
you're right.
it's still the same thing that drives me. It's the guitar. You come back to the guitar, the way it feels, the way it looks, the way it sounds, the way it translates something from you into what we can all hear and hopefully enjoy. It's still the same thing that drives me, and you still get frustrated, whether it's creatively or whatever it might be. You still come back to it. It's part of you. It's part of me. It's part of, you know, why you realize I'm going to come back to this no matter how hard it gets because I love it more than anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you realize that in the early days, really, the challenges of it all.
You mentioned 412s and all that. I mean, what was some of the gear that you were using in the beginning? Like, do you remember your first like electric guitar?
Yeah, I mean, it's always like you struggle to find the tool that works for you. And again, you know, we had this conversation before. You find all those things out by doing those things. What works, what doesn't work, what cuts through in a band situation. You know, I remember I gravitated towards Gibson because I didn't know at the time, but the humbucker, that was part of it. Now I know, but I didn't know at the time. It was just, this is the tool for me. It felt right. It was heavy in weight. I mean, like the physical thing, it was heavy. It felt right. It felt like I could connect in a certain way. There was a physical thing going on where I had to pull the notes out, and it made me connect with the music I was playing. The humbucker was thick and it kind of cut through the mix, and it had the right tonality. Again, at the time I didn't know any of this. It just like, oh, that sounded right, and it felt right, and you go with it. And the amplification at the time, you try some things and that didn't work out, and let's try this, and you know, 50 instances of blowing up the amplifier later, you find one that works for you. And I found that, you know, the simplest, you know, you try like a Marshall or whatever it is, and then you go through a journey of trying, you know, racks of effects and stuff, and you come back full circle to the Marshall with, you know, you can see the pedal board I've got here. It's literally, this is what I used to play, and the only difference here is I've got a power supply.
I noticed you're not doing the full-on like pedal board thing, which I love.
Like that. That's like
I mean, you usually see something like this nowadays. You know, the kids are all about the pedal boards, right? And making them, you know, how much they can cram in there, different directions. But I don't know. We were talking about this earlier where it's like, at the end of the day, for most of the touring musicians and for the ones that are just really more concentrated on the playing, I love the fact that it's like, you know, and this is easy to swap out. You're not worried about it. You mentioned you have a board that you use on tour as well.
I have a board with Priest, obviously, for my tech. Part of this is if anything goes wrong, I know it's either a cable or usually it's a battery.
Right.
So I can take that cable out. I can locate pretty quickly what the problem is and carry on.
Sure.
And that comes from being in a bar. You've got to carry on quickly.
Yes.
If anything goes wrong, you've got to sell beer. That's why you're there.
That's
as we
right.
spoke about.
Or someone spilling a beer.
exactly.
on your stuff.
Usually me. But, with the Priest situation, I've got, one of the best techs in the world. He's been with me for 12 years. And if it goes wrong, he's trained to know what that is and locate it. But I've got no idea. If something goes wrong, I wouldn't know where to start. So if something goes wrong, I know it's that, try that. If that doesn't work, it's that. And then within 2 minutes, less than that, I can be up and running again. Or I can just go straight through the amplifier and we're back up and running. So it comes from fear of something going wrong that I can just rectify it.
And the least path of resistance and the least amount of troubleshooting.
That's exactly right. And lack of knowledge, really. Lack of, because I'm concentrating
you're
on
busy
what I'm doing.
playing.
That's what it is.
You're busy. Come on, Well, it's funny. We mentioned Priest and we mentioned the going through the gigs and all that. So taking a look at your your career highlights and like your timeline, you're playing in these bars. You're getting seasoned. You're playing all these different songs. You're playing for long hours. You're going through the ringer. 2011, you joined Priest. So what was that whole thing about? Because I read something that was very similar to like the Quincy Jones calling Eddie Van Halen and him thinking that it's not Eddie Van Halen kind of thing. The emails, you thought it was spam or something like super crazy.
Of course, yeah. I didn't know it at the time. They called me and they explained the situation, and they mentioned that they sent me a couple of emails a week or so ago.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they were persistent and they called me. I mean, if I sent an email to someone, I didn't respond twice.
Sure.
I would have thought, well, we're obviously not interested. I'm going to look elsewhere. Fortunately, they were persistent, and we're sitting here talking about it. But so after I got off the phone to management, I looked in my deleted email folder, and there they were, and it was from a management company that I didn't recognize, and the subject was Judas Priest. Now, I thought it was just a mail out from a heavy metal site that I've been...
Oh, sure. Like an upcoming release
whatever. So I deleted them to remove the email from my inbox. And there was two of them, so I opened them up, and sure enough, it outlined the same situation that management went over in the phone call. And I always remember, man, like, can you imagine Priest getting a new guitar player and you don't know that those emails are in that? Or even worse, Priest get a new guitar player, fantastic, brilliant, and then you accidentally find those emails in that deleted box and you realize that was the opportunity.
That was the opportunity.
That was it, and you don't get many of them.
I think that's a huge tipping point and like a juncture here to talk about, like, because this is something that I wanted to talk to you about as well, and I'm sure a lot of other guitarists out there are thinking. The transition, the getting the call, the steps that it takes to be ready for something like this when you get the call, because it's like, that's the story, right? Like that's the fantasy, that's the goal that we would all hope for, is you get the call one day. What does it take to be ready? What were the steps that you think may have helped to be ready for that call? Because I know when something like that comes up, it can be overwhelming to some people. It can be, it's a lot to take in.
I think a lot of it had to do with the amount that I was playing live. I really do. You play differently live. You get one shot at the song.
Yeah.
You build up. It's a different way of playing. You're playing to people, so there's no redo. You don't get reliant on, the way we record in studios these days, there's the redo button. You can go over Control Z, you can, erase that.
Or you can go piece by piece.
Yeah, you can.
You don't even have to do a full take.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So live, you don't get that comfort and you become seasoned with that mindset.
Right.
And I think doing that 4 or 5 nights a week in front of people religiously every day, through thick and thin, through those frustrations that I told you about, I think that really had a big part to play in why I felt like I had a chance. I had a shot at it.
What was the audition like?
Pretty laid back.
Really?
Pretty laid back. Yeah. I went up and met the guys. I had to borrow the train fare from my mother because I didn't have the train fare to get up there. And I went up and I met the management. I met Glenn and Rob. And we discussed, what they wanted, and they asked me what I wanted, and that was the first indication.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the first indication to me that they wanted a member of the band. Nice. They wanted someone with an opinion and ideas and their own thoughts, and
not just a hired gun.
Right, and that was there was more of that to come, but that was my first indication. Looking back on it, that was my first indication that they wanted someone. What did I want? I'm like, I wasn't expecting that sort of question. So we discussed that, and then we went up in the studio, and they plugged me in. Glenn plugged me in through a rig. I can't remember what it was. It was like some processor thing. And he said, "Get your sound together. I'm going to go and make a coffee, and I'll come back up in 10 minutes." So he went downstairs. The studio was upstairs, and he went downstairs. And unbeknownst to me, he stood at the bottom of the stairs and listened as I warmed up. And he said subsequently that he knew then and there, like the search was over. Well, it was a good thing I didn't have Glenn Tipton sitting there.
Yeah.
'Cause what'd you play?
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, he came in afterwards and he said, like, we've seen some YouTube stuff. We know your history. You know, I've been out with Iron Maiden, and I'm familiar with big stages. You know, you knew a bit of my history. You knew I could play.
Right.
And he actually said he'd be embarrassed if he sat in front, you know, like we're sitting, it was like this. He said he'd be embarrassed, he wouldn't know what to play.
Sure.
And I said to him, Glenn, you don't get opportunities like this every day. This is what you aspire, like you said, it's like cliche. You aspire to be as good as these guys, but you don't think you're ever going to get the call. And if I can't think of something to play right now, then I might as well give up.
Yeah.
You're not going to get another chance like this.
The game is, you want to be ready for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm ready. I feel like I'm ready. If I can't think of something to play now, I might as well pick another path.
That makes sense, yes.
And he's brought that up after as well, and he said he liked that attitude, and I thought of something to play, I guess, okay. You know, because we all know, you know, breaking the law and stuff like that is not the most technical stuff to play.
So you're not playing, you didn't have to play to a track
or
anything, and this wasn't a band jam, this wasn't the first interaction with the band yet, just
No, it was just me and Glenn in a room. Rob was in the studio, so I just noodled around, like what we're doing now, really. And he said, obviously I know you can play. What we're going to do is we're going to get some tracks together that we're considering playing on the next tour. We're going to see what you do with them, because there's, you know, some classic KK Downing solos on there. We want to see what you do with them.
Yeah.
So I went home, recorded my versions of it, and went from there.
So these are new tracks. These are not pre-existing from albums.
No, they're classic tracks.
Oh, classic
they were
tracks.
big tracks.
Okay,
I think it was Victim of Changes, Beyond the Realms of Death, Blood Red Skies, and another one I can't remember. But they wanted to hear what I did with his, and I've never asked them about this, but I did what I thought was faithful to what went before.
So these are the tracks without those guitar parts.
No, he just said do what you want to do on these tracks, and I just recorded my own. You know, I went back home and done my own little drum pattern on the solo sections.
Oh, gotcha.
And then recorded the rhythm guitars, and fortunately I had the capability to do that. Didn't sound great, but it was enough. I've still got them somewhere. Maybe I
enough to get the idea down, though.
Enough to get the idea down.
Totally.
And my approach was just to honour what went before. You know, I was a big fan of the band, big fan of KK. Honour what went before, but also kind of try and honour myself going forward a little bit. You know, put me on a little bit of, because that's what they stand for. They stand for standing up for what you believe in as a band, and maybe going against the grain. And this is what we do, and we do it like this, and this is our character and our personality, and we're unique. And so you've got to get a bit of that in there as well. That's, you know,
so
important.
That kind of says something to me. The hang, the vibe.
Yeah,
you got to match it. They're looking for that just as much as the player.
1,000%.
Right, just as much as the playing capabilities.
Yeah, I'm not the, you know, there's a million better guitar players than me, but I think there's a lot that goes into a band aside from the playing.
Yeah.
You know, as you said, it's the hang. You spend a lot of time with each other, whether it's traveling in a bus or on a plane or on tour or in the studio. There's got to be, you know, a lot of it is that. And then there's the playing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There's more to it than just the playing. And I think for a band like that, it's an important thing at that stage of their career.
Right.
They don't want someone to come in there, I don't think, and shred and be all attitudey. And you know, anyone can shred that stuff. It's not the notes that you play, it's how you play the notes, I think, more to them, and how you are as a person, because you got to live together for the next 2 years.
Right, you're spending time in the travel, and I mean, there's more travel than show stage time.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly that. Yeah. So, and they know that.
Yeah.
And I think they're looking for someone, as you said, to hang.
Yeah.
Be a part of the band, rather than someone to come in and play the notes that are on the record.
That's an important part that, you know, is I think overlooked nowadays too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. You take social media, for example. you know, everyone's playing in their bedroom by themselves, or they're playing by, you know, or they're doing their own thing. And it's like, you always wonder too, it's like there's nothing like that human interaction and the band dynamic.
Nothing like it, even from a a recording standpoint. You know, as we've talked about with the equipment side of things, you sift through the gear that works and what doesn't pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In a live scenario, and it's the same with people. You work out pretty quickly, especially with crew dynamics.
Right.
If someone comes into the crew, you know they're going to get on or whether they're not, and the crew usually weed that out. If it doesn't work, it's going to sort itself out.
Right.
And also playing, recording, if we play together, me, you, a drummer, a bass player and a singer, like they used to do it, there's stuff that happens, the spontaneity that comes from inspiration from each other. You might do something and I'm like, that's great, I'm gonna interact with that. And the drummer might hear that and play something that sparks him off.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, it's like a symbiotic relationship between the five of you that you're not going to get putting down tracks in your bedroom.
That's a great point. That is very true. So, because I guess this first part of the, I don't want to say audition, but like, this is leading up to playing with the band, right? So like you've played the tracks, you've sent the tracks back to them, but there's got to be, when does the moment now come up to where it's like, okay, cool, this sounds great, we want to bring you in the room, we want to do like a rehearsal, or we want to run through a couple of songs? Or is it straight, or is it basically like, because I've seen the gigs where it's like, you gotta go straight to the tour.
Well,
Straight to the stage.
I've never thought about this, but I got the gig before we all played together.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they knew.
Yeah.
I guess fortunately for me, they knew I was the guy. They gave me the gig about a week after I sent the CD.
Wow. That's great.
And they invited me back, and I got the gig. And then about a month after that, we announced it to the world. And then we started rehearsals. So it could have been a nightmare.
Yeah, because you were playing that year live as well. The first performance, I think, is also in 2011. So I don't know how much time you had rehearsal with them to where, like, I think it was the American Idol show. So how much time is
We had a couple of weeks. We had a couple of
Only?
weeks. Yeah, we had a couple of weeks, and then we flew out for the American Idol show, and then flew back and done another week, done some production rehearsals, which I'd never done. I'd never had production or anything like that, really. So it was a few weeks of rehearsal, and you're right, we'd never done that before. So I remember the first time we were talking about tuning earlier on. With the first tracks we played, it was without Rob, so it was just the band without Rob, and I was out of tune. I couldn't get the guitar in tune, and it's like, new guy, I can't get it in tune. But we figured it out, and then the second week, Rob came in and added the vocals to it, and we went from there. But yeah, you're right, it could have been awful. But I think they knew.
No, and you know what? That has a lot to say with, again, the pre-game that you had prepared for yourself going into this. The playing at the clubs, the learning of all the songs, going through all the gear. It's just the journey and enjoying it the whole time, I know prior to this, you had worked with Christopher Lee.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorites as far as an actor goes, big horror movie guy and all that. And then you had worked with Steve Harris. So you mentioned Iron Maiden, but I know that you had already done, what I want to get the story for everyone out there is like, you weren't just playing cover bands, you also were doing other stuff, original music and working with some other names as well before this came into effect. So some of that also must have helped with, the experience.
I knew that.
Yeah.
But I don't think they knew as much, I would like to think that I was ready for that step.
Sure.
But they were taking a bit of a risk, I think. They didn't know. I don't know. Maybe they knew something intuitively that, this is the right guy. And obviously we're still here 12 years later. So they hopefully made the right choice.
You're doing something right.
Hopefully. I make a great cup of tea, man. That's what it is. That's really what it boils down to. Any advice I'd give to aspiring musicians, if it's an English band and you get the call, make sure you know how to make a cup of tea. Right. No, I'm only kidding. But at the time, I think I was giving something off maybe that they could trust, maybe a confidence that wasn't arrogant. Again, arrogance, they could see a mile off. I think that wouldn't have worked either. So, and it worked. And we went, and I think it was a month after really, that we went out and done our first shows in Europe and went from there. And since then, the fans have been nothing but, accepting and welcoming. Obviously, you get some negativity. It's a big change after 40 years.
Right.
I'd be the same if I was a fan on the other end. Like, what's going on here? And that's natural. they're a big band. There's a lot of passion for the band, a lot of history. Any change like that, it's a big change. People are going to be a bit startled by it. You know, that's natural. But
Sure.
you know, over the last 12 years, the band, the fans have been just fantastic. And
That's killer.
So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, that's killer. What's the approach with the gear? Just in general, you said something earlier about live versus studio. Things change? Things stay the same?
For me, they stay the same as much as they can. When you're on a big tour like with Priest, it's reliability more than anything. You know, you're out for, 6 to 8 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
You can't be breaking down in the middle of nowhere, and you can't get stuff fixed, or you can't get it's got to be reliable. Mm-hmm. Other than that, it's pretty much pedals on the floor.
Yeah.
Through a switcher. It's making this as reliable as it can be for me. So I've got heads. I use one channel on the heads.
That's right, because we dialed you into the Mark 7 there. It's got multi-channels, and yeah, I remember we were just like, you want to clean? You're like, no, man, let's just go straight for a good overdrive sound. So that means, are we doing stuff with the volume?
Yeah.
Like, are we rolling stuff back and all that?
All the time.
Cool.
All the cleans come from,
Yeah.
so you've got clean, semi-dirty, and then full on if you need it. And then if I do need it, there's a drive pedal on the floor there as well. As we spoke about before, I love the plexi thing, but the plexis are historically unreliable, and you have to run them full on all the time, and that's a lot. You need another amp guy to take care of them. I think AC/DC do the same. They've got a dedicated amp guy to look after it.
Especially when you're running stuff that hot.
That's what I mean.
Like, it's like, yeah, something's going to go.
They're going to go down, and we can't be having that. Otherwise, I'd have plexis out with me. But so we've got. I'm using Wizard on the stage.
Oh, great!
And it's essentially, the front end of like an 800 type thing, and the back end of like a major. So it's like a 150 watt power stage with the front end of like a Marshall type sounding.
Sure. Would you say that the gear, when you're playing with Priest and then when you're doing the stuff with Elegant Weapons, would you say that the gear kind of stays the same?
Pretty much.
So that's great, because that's a huge bonus for someone that can keep their signature sound through multiple projects.
Yeah.
Right?
It's all about reliability. It really. If I could, I'd take the plexis out for Elegant Weapons. I love the plexi thing. It's unreliable, so we need to make it as reliable as possible, and also for me being as stripped down as possible. The guitar's the same. In some respects, it's hot rodded. In other respects, it's stripped down. So I add things to make it do what I need it to do, and then take things away that I don't need.
Right.
And
I notice you've got the Floyd, of course,
Yep.
for the flexibility for the soloing and all that. And
that's when I run out of ideas. As we know.
When in doubt, hit the bar.
Floyd it out. Yeah. But I never use. There's one volume control for both pickups. I took away the tone and the other volume. Never used them.
And this guy is your guitar that Gibson made. So how long have you had this guitar for?
I had this. This was the latest prototype that I've been using. I mean, I think this was last September. I've had this one since.
Yeah. Got the EMGs.
Yeah, but we've been working on this since pre-pandemic.
Okay.
On the idea, but obviously then the pandemic hit. I wanted to get it out on the road test it like we're talking about. I didn't want to put my name to something that wasn't road tested. There's no point in that to me whatsoever. We wanted the next level of what we had before with the Epiphone, and it's based on the guitar I've been using with Priest for the last 12 years, which is a customized Flying V.
Oh, okay. Great. Yep.
It's the next level of that. So signature EMGs in this one. It's Pelham Blue.
Can we show? I just want to show the neck off here.
Well, this always happens.
Take a look at that. That's how you know the guitar has been played, right?
This always happens. This, I don't know why I just don't take the ring off. But it becomes, as I said before, about the weight of a guitar. You have to interact with it differently. This, for me, it feels different, and I interact with it differently, and different places.
This tells me
different.
the story. This tells me what I need to know right here.
Well, yeah, I play them. I played them. I said I've only had this since September. This was the last one in a chain of prototypes that we've had, and this is the one that we signed off on.
Yeah,
and I've had it ever since. And it's just, I don't know, it feels different with the paint when the paint comes off, and it comes off where you play it.
Sure.
So this is where it feels. it just feels right, you know.
Yeah. You think you give us a little, you know, I just want to show everyone just a little taste of what you have going on here. I know we did the jam in the beginning, but yeah, just if you want to just kind of give us like when it's being used, or if you want to just crank some stuff up right now and just play a little bit.
Okay,
just kind of give me a little walkthrough, you know, give us a little.
Well, the chorus is my number one.
Okay.
I have the chorus on 95% of the time.
Yeah.
Without the chorus, so we're on about 6 on the guitar at the moment. So
I think that's
and the standby, yes. Do you know, I was doing an Instagram live, and someone said, "What's that hissing sound?" And I said, "That's an amplifier." So that tells you a lot about, you know, people in.
That's what they do.
Stuff. That's what they do. They make a noise, you know. So we're on about 5 or 6 on the guitar.
Sure.
Obviously,
Nice.
that's without, and this is with.
So you're using that on the clean, well, not really a clean, but you're using that during the solos or the
Everything.
rhythm? Okay, cool,
Everything.
cool.
I mean, I'll use it clean as
Yeah.
well, so that'll be.
And then you've got the Univibe also in that modulation category there.
Univibe, I mean, just incidentally, I use the chorus. I think it gives it, obviously it gives it movement, and it gives it like, especially with the one guitar thing I found, it just gives it almost like an EQ.
Sure.
Not a static EQ, but obviously it moves. So
A little
it gives
bit of
it like an
movement.
EQ that I can't get from an EQ, if that makes sense.
No,
That's
that
what it
makes
feels
sense.
like anyway. The Univibe is just instant Hendrix.
Yeah.
With the active pickups, I normally have to come down a bit on the volume pot, because if you overdrive the Univibe too much, you don't really hear the effects, and I'll show you what I mean. So
Okay.
this is full on the guitar. So if I back it down a little bit, say to about 3 or 4 or 5 on the guitar. It just cuts through a little bit more.
It's great.
Which
got
is
a
why
little bit of the Trower thing going
absolutely. If you use them with single coils, it's usually, because they're a lower output, usually it cuts through a lot more, which is why I find you have to bring it down.
Yeah.
Active pickups, they're hotter, they're not as low output as a single coil, so you have to kind of compensate for that, bring it down on the guitar. That's what I find anyway. So
Yeah.
it cuts through a bit more.
Oh, that sounds great. And then the tumness, you were talking about this earlier, depends on the amp you're using.
It does.
Just to give it a push, but it's not so much for, is it for drive and
It is.
gain?
It is. I mean, we don't need it today, really.
Yeah.
It's just if I'm feeling a bit lazy
Okay.
on the day. You can hear what I've got. I'll wind it down. It's quite clean. So it's on about 25%. So it's on the dial. You know, it's on about the 9 o'clock position.
Yeah.
And we've gone into Hendrix tuning, which is perfect. So when you crank it up on the guitar, it loses a bit. You don't hear the jumps quite so much. I'll show you what I mean. So this is on maybe 7. You know, so if you
Kill
need
it.
it, just gives you a little push over the cliff.
I had a flashback to Woodstock just now.
That's-
That's it.
job done.
That's
all
it.
I'm trying to do.
And then you've got the delay, just for cleans, for solos, or both in the loop, obviously, I see that.
Bit of both, if I can have it. Again, depends on the amp. I don't like to rely on a delay, and I find the more I rely on it at the beginning of a tour, I find myself using delay at the beginning of a tour.
It makes you a little dependent on it. Because it adds that little sauce and that space. I am guilty of keeping that thing on more than I probably should. I
find though, as I go through a tour,
the
delay comes out. Because it makes it more immediate. Your fingers get stronger, and you don't need the source, and you can it's more immediate without a delay. And you can play it. You know, you don't have to rely on the delay.
Right.
But again, if there's no effects loop, I won't use a delay. I won't put it through the front because it sounds messy. The Cantrell wah, there's a dial on the side of the wah. I don't like it when it gets too cutting on the toe down end. Yeah, so you can wind a bit of that back.
Oh, right. The range.
Yeah.
The high range. Gotcha.
I can't use my right foot with a wah. I'm doing it for you. But I'm a left-footed wah guy. But I don't. It's rare that I.
All the way down? No.
I don't usually. I'm not that sort of player. I'll sort of. More of a Schenker thing, more of an EQ.
And you know what? Just from that example, I thought the go-to is you start doing the you know, but the other way, you can hear more of the notes, you can hear more of the playing. Otherwise, the effect does take over.
Yeah,
so I think that's smart. Yeah.
The great thing about a wah is that everyone's got their own footprint. Everyone plays a wah differently, and I'm always searching for something that makes me sound not like Zakk Wylde, Michael Schenker, or Dave Murray from Iron Maiden. I'm always searching for something that makes me sound like me, and hopefully that's another thing that gives me my own sound is your footprint.
Right.
Hopefully the wah, you know, makes you something that makes you sound more unique if possible. Because that's always a challenge for me.
Yeah, gotcha.
So yeah, that's all it is. And then anything else that gets added with Priest is usually song specific. So if there's an octave part or a double lead part, you know, Andy's playing rhythm, and I'll put like an octave pedal on a piece. Or if there's like a rotator speaker, I'll put that in for that song, or a different delay. But that's the core of it right there. Delay, chorus. Even the univibe is not essential. Delay, chorus, wah. I've got a rotovibe as well, which I use.
But otherwise, pretty straightforward.
That's it.
Yeah, that's great.
The tuner as well, that's optional as well, as you can hear.
Yeah.
But you know, Jimi Hendrix didn't have a tuner.
Tuning's overrated. I mean,
yeah, no.
Man, let's talk about some of the stigmas of, you know, the preparation, being on the road, touring, you know, keeping yourself in conditions that are gonna, you know, persevere through these moments. I mean, I know you had quite a bit of a health scare a little while back, and I just wanted to kind of dive in that a little bit because, man, you're on stage and you made it through the solo of Painkiller.
Many people haven't. We've lost many people due to that solo.
Yes.
But I prevailed.
You did.
But to get back to your original point, yeah, I mean, you find out pretty quickly that the partying image of yesteryear doesn't really stand up too much anymore. I mean, especially with a band like Priest, there's a responsibility that goes back more than 50 years now. Mm-hmm. You know, so you can't be getting up there with anything less than 1,000% to give. That's just it.
I think there's a common misconception that there is like this party lifestyle, or I don't know. And you don't want to say that it's a job kind of thing, because it is a job, but it's not like you're at the grind.
It's a duty to fulfill for me.
Great word.
So, and it's been that way ever since I got the audition. You know what you're being summoned to. Yeah. You know, and it's no different every night when you go on and you play in front of 10, 20, 80,000 people. You're doing a duty, not only to the band, but to the people that paid for the tickets to see the band, and to the genre, to heavy metal. You're there to do a duty. So, as I said, we like to have fun. We enjoy what we do, But you find out pretty quickly that if you burn the candle at both ends, it's only going to go one way. So you know, try and stay healthy, and it's all about sustaining the quality to represent the band and the legacy and fulfill that duty that you're there to fulfill.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, I mean, the experience that you had, which, you know, was real serious, you know, did it change your afterthoughts? Did it change, you know, your approach on life in general? What was the thing that got you through that? Because I know you wanted to bounce back as quick as possible, and you did.
Well, I had a fantastic support system, both at home, from the fans, online, and obviously from the support that I received from the surgeons and the hospitals and stuff. But you know what it was? You know what the main thing was that got me back?
What's that? The anchor.
No word of a lie. As soon as I could, I think I got back home on a Friday after the incident.
Yeah.
It happened. I can't remember how many days. I think I was in the hospital for about 10 days. Well, I should have been in there about a month apparently, but you know, you got to get back to it.
Yeah. Wow.
I was back home after about 10 or 11 days, and I got back on a Friday. So by the Monday, I was back with the guitar in my hand, and it was awkward because you know you have to sit there, whatever guitar it is, you have to sit there. Your chest has just been opened up and put back together with wires, literally, you know. And so you have to sit down, and sitting down over a guitar is you're now putting pressure on everything's squished together, so it hurts. So.
Right.
You know, it takes a bit of getting used to, but it's part of the healing process. And I think we were back out on the road 5 months after it happened. Yeah, but having those tour dates, you know, my other half, she was like, it's too soon. You know, people were telling me it's too soon. But having those tour dates, it gave you something to aim for, a target to get back to. And for me, it worked. And it was a medicine. It was a healing process to get back to the guitar, get back to playing, because that's who I am. That's who I've been for a long time. Yeah. And it sounds corny, but that was part of my process. That was a major part of it. Getting back to the guitar, playing live, getting back on the horse and riding it. You know, and honestly, it's who I am. And however you can get back to some sort of normality after something like that is important. Sure. To me.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and like you said, you bounced back and you guys went full force. I mean, there was a tour, another album had come out with Priest, and you were part of that writing process and part of like the collaborative, which is killer. Because again, that goes back to our original conversation of like the ultimate dream goal, where you're not just the hired gun, but you've definitely been in that situation too, where you've had to just play the stuff the way it is and do like you said, the duty. And then in Priest, you get to, you know, branch out. And, you know, speaking of branching out, you've had a killer album come out with your solo project, Elegant Weapons, which I got to take a listen to. And, dude, there are some tracks, there's some moments, there's some tracks, just, you know, really wanted to dive into some of that and just, you know, talk a little bit about the writing process, the band dynamic. How did all that come together? Like, when did you start getting together with those guys and start playing?
Well, it's always been on my mind, really, to have something that goes along either parallel with Priest or continues after Priest. When I joined Priest, it was the farewell tour. It was called Epitaph. It was billed as the final world tour. So I'd have been stupid, really, not to kind of think about what I'm going to do after this. They were 40 years in at that point. I had a conversation with Glenn Tipton about, you know, they're not going to be around for 20, 25 years. They're at this point in their career. So I'd have been stupid, really, to not think about what I'm going to do fairly soon.
Sure.
That didn't happen. Obviously, we're still here 12 years later, and the world's a better place for it. You know, we're putting out new records, we're touring still, and that's fantastic. But I started thinking about it then. You get on a train like Priest, we did the Epitaph tour, it fires you up to go in the studio and do another record with them. So we did Redeemer of Souls, and then you get excited, you want to get out on the road and play that, so that's what we did.
Yeah.
You get out on the road and play the Redeemer of Souls tour, and you get excited to go and do another record, and the cycle continues, and that's why we're still here. Plus, obviously, they've got 50 years worth of fan love that put them there, and it drives that commitment and that duty from them to fulfill their commitment to the fans in return. So you can see how it rolls on.
Right.
and I think they'll do it until they can't do it anymore.
Sure.
You know, but so that's where it kind of the seed got planted in my brain all those years ago, and I didn't want to. As it was rolling along, and Priest felt like that's my band. You know, I'm in the band now, and I said to you earlier on, they welcomed me as part of the family. So did the fans, and I didn't want to be one of those guys who gets a big gig and then 5 minutes later say, listen to my other band. You know,
sure.
That's a bit disingenuous. And
yes.
It's not really appropriate. So
yes.
Priest was my band now, still is my band. And then the COVID pandemic hit around, you know, the lockdowns hit around 2020. No one was doing anything.
Right.
We didn't even know if we were ever going to tour again. You know, all of us didn't know if
or
we
leave
had
the
an
house.
industry.
Totally.
Exactly, yeah. So the silver lining to that was I had an opportunity to take some ideas that I've been working on from the previous couple of years. You know, we were always writing, we're always putting ideas down, and we might have a chorus or a song start here and there. What have I got? You know, I've got some time on my hands. Let's see what I've got. The Priest record was written. You know, so all the riffs were signed off on. So I could now draw a line underneath that and say, right, anything I come up with now that I need to come up with, I can dedicate to this new record.
Okay.
And I did that. I had the time. So I got some of the old ideas I've been working on and wrote some new ones. And did I have an EP? Did I have an album? Did I have a band I could put together? Did I have a band I could take on the road? I didn't know. We didn't know if we'd ever be on the road again anyway. So I just thought I'd sit down and see what I had. And the album is a consequence of that. I've got some, you know, great friends who are legends that I was fortunate enough to be able to call up and say, "Can you play on the record for me?" And luckily, they could. We had to do it obviously separately because of the limitations of the lockdowns.
Right. Okay. So this was all like remote, like.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
It wasn't that experience that we were talking about earlier, where we all got in a room and did it together.
Is you basically like putting something down, maybe to a click track, sending it over to a drummer, getting at least some foundational tracks down, and building off of that kind of thing.
Well, I put everything down. All the tracks were written. It was like MIDI drums, and MIDI bass, and stuff like that. Sent it out to the guys. They dug the stuff, and we went from there. You know. And again, I'm grateful that they liked the stuff. They put it down in their respective studios.
Sure.
But there's always challenges with albums. You know, whether it's that one. You know, Andy Sneap plays in Priest now. He plays live with Priest. He's a fantastic producer. He produced it. He did that remotely. So we found a way around him being able to sit in on the sessions in my studio, hear what we were doing back at his place. My point is, there's always challenges on a record, whether it's a financial one, if you don't have the space and you've got to record guitar in a closet somewhere. But that's always the case.
Yeah.
You've got to make it happen, and that's part of the magic of making a record. And this was the challenge with this record. So it's no different. And that makes a record what it is. If it's too easy, it's like the shark in Jaws. Didn't work. But they rose to the challenge and they made it work, and it became a better movie for it because the shark wasn't on screen all the time.
Yeah.
It built the tension, and it made it a scarier movie because the shark didn't work.
Right.
You know, so you work with those challenges. I'm not saying this record is as good as Jaws is, but the point is, it's like art from adversity. You've got to work with the challenges, and that creates the final product, and it becomes part of the story of it.
Sure.
So that's what we did, and we put it down, got the record finished. Obviously, Scott Travis and Rex Brown, they're busy guys. They're doing other things. Rex is doing Pantera at the moment.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was able to put the band together again with some more musicians that are fantastic and take it out on the road. And we've got some dates coming up in June and July. And,
nice. Okay. So the tracks that I heard were, was it Blind Leading the Blind, and then Do or Die?
Yes.
And man, there is a riff in the bridge of Do or Die that is just fun. I thought it was just a fantastic riff. I mean, the everything I heard is fantastic, but I was wondering if you could just give us a little breakdown. You know, if you can give us a little breakdown on that bridge riff. Just kind of walk us through that maybe, or just show it to us.
So the bridge, you call the bridge in the US, you call the bridge the midsection, is it? Like the middle eight section?
Yeah, not the verse, not the chorus, but the part that happens in the middle.
So it's like a breakdown section after the second chorus. Because I've just found this out. I thought a bridge was something completely different. I've just been schooled. Well, long story, but now, so I've got to clarify what the bridge is. Is it the riff? I might get this wrong. Is it the riff that goes like this? Is it that thing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's what it is. Is it a pedal tone they call it? So everything there's a note being played all the time.
Yes.
And it bounces off the bottom E.
Okay.
All the time. So the melody, if you like, is. That's what it is.
Okay.
It sounds silly like that, you know. But if you put the bottom E pedal tone in. That so
Killer.
That's what it is. It's nothing. We're not reinventing the wheel there. It's just
No,
my
it's a
love
great-
for that
just a
kind of
great-
riff, you know.
Great sounding riff. Yeah. Now
thank you.
you have that one in your back pocket, or is that something that you kind of wrote when the time came for the recording process?
Yeah, it needed something. It felt like it needed to, break down a little bit and just have the guitar there. So everything comes from the guitar. Everything comes from obviously my influence of what I like to hear.
Yeah.
And I could just sit there, and sometimes stuff comes out, sometimes it doesn't. But I knew the feeling that I wanted at that part. So I wasn't going to play like 9 chords or whatever.
Sure,
there. I knew
sure.
what needed to sound like, and so I went around a few patterns like that, and that one seemed to fit and make sense and fit with the rest of the song, and so I went with that.
Killer, man. Well, shoot. I think there's obviously a lot of stuff happening on the horizon. So let's recap on what's coming up. We got release tomorrow.
Release tomorrow. Elegant Weapons, Horns for Halo. Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
New video tomorrow as well.
New video tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and then tour dates.
Tour dates. I think our first date is opening for the mighty Pantera in Prague. Yeah, hopefully we survive that.
Bringing the heat.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, do or die, man.
How many
You know?
how many nights is that? Is that just the one night or 2 nights? Or?
We've got 4 nights with Pantera spread
Yeah.
out, and then we're doing some big festivals. We're doing Grass Pop and Hellfest. We're doing the Stillhouse Festival in the UK. I think there's about 14 shows all in all over June and July. So yeah, we're about to get on the road, and it's what it's about for me. It's not. I know some bands, they put out a record and that's it, but for me it was about putting out a record, making a statement, getting out on the road and connecting with fans and growing and evolving as a band. Those good mistakes that you make, like we're talking about with the gear. Some stuff works, some stuff doesn't, and you figure out what works, what doesn't, how to fix it, and you get better from there. So I'm a fan of that dynamic. What songs work, how can we make them better, how can we make them interact with fans better, how can we make it a better experience and make the whole thing better. I'm all about that, so I can't wait to get out on the road, play live, connect with fans, and hopefully we can take some of Pantera's fans with us.
Killer. I'm sure you will. Before we head out here, we're gonna do a little jamming on the way out. But real quick, what would you like to say? What's a little message, a little inspiration you give to like a new player or someone that's grinding away out there?
Well, I've always been an advocate for you don't need to know the latest mode or scale, or you don't need to know all the theory, anything like that, and I'm living proof of it. I don't know what I'm doing at all, apart from what I've found out by putting pedal to the metal and finding out via experience. As we talked about, gear, sound, what works, strings, picks, it's what works for you. And if I'm living proof, if I can do it, you can do it. Trust me. You don't need to know what mode this is before you go out. And you don't have to be great to do, but you have to do to be great. You know what I mean? That's been my philosophy. So just get out there and do it, and experience, make mistakes, do what feels right to you, not what someone else tells you to do necessarily. Just get out there and play in what feels right. If I can do it, you can do it. That's what should be on my gravestone.
I love it. Richie, man, thanks so much for joining us today. Everyone out there, keep an eye on Elegant Weapons. Keep an eye on the tour dates. Keep an eye on Priest. Keep an eye on Richie. And man, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here, man, and just getting your insights on stuff. I say we'll do a little jam and get us out of here.
Let's jam some, man. Yeah.
Let's go get some lunch. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'm not playing that riff that you just showed me. I won't have time for that. I don't have to learn
I was
that.
hanging in there. There's one of them on there.
Yeah.
I'm going to play it slowly. It goes. I swear to God, that's a slow version.
I'd rather do the other one.
Dude, I can't do it.
Okay, I'll give you something to solo over again.
Yeah, of course. I was just going to say that. Something.
But God, I wish I could just, I heard that. I had to see you break it down because it was like, no way. Different key or you want to stay in E?
Do a different key.
1, 2. Killer.
Oh, it's done. There you go.
Awesome, man.
Nice one,
Killer,
brother.
brother. Thank you. That was great, dude.